A 7-year-old girl with tangled blonde hair and a faded pink jacket stumbled into traffic on Sunset Boulevard. Small sneakers barely visible beneath speeding tires. A black SUV bore down like a missile wrapped in steel and speed and noise. Aria Morales did not think. She moved. Her delivery bag hit the pavement. Her body was already in motion. She grabbed Emma's thin shoulders, bones like bird wings under that worn fabric, and yanked her backward as the SUV screeched past, horn blaring like a death sentence. Aria's knees scraped asphalt. Blood bloomed warm through her pants. Emma clung to her, sobbing into her neck, small fists gripping Aria's delivery uniform like it was the only solid thing in a world that kept trying to kill her. The wind cut through Aria's thin sweater. October air, dry and sharp, carrying the smell of exhaust and burning rubber and October leaves that had turned brown before their time. Aria whispered into the child's tangled hair, "You are safe now. I have got you. I have got you." Emma pulled back just enough to look up. Tear-streaked face. Eyes swollen and red and desperate. She was shaking so hard her whole small body trembled like a candle in the wind. From her jacket pocket, she pulled something. A photograph. Creased and worn. The edges soft from being held 1,000 times. The man in that photograph wore an expensive suit. His dark eyes held something dangerous, something that made people look away first. A scar ran from his eye to his cheekbone like a blade had once tried to split his face open. Aria's hands went cold. Her breath stopped. She knew this face. Everyone in Los Angeles knew this face. Aleandro Calabrese. The name people only whispered. In parking lots. In the backs of restaurants. Behind closed doors. Never aloud. Never where the wrong ears might hear it. Aleandro Calabrese. The king of the underworld. The man who controlled everything from the docks to the harbor to the streets of downtown where homeless men slept in doorways and did not ask questions about the black SUVs that came and went in the night. Aria's mind raced. 14 months. The child had been missing for 14 months. There had been a photograph on the news, a desperate man in a dark suit, $5 million offered, then $10 million, then no number at all because money could not buy back what had been taken. Emma Calabrese. The Mafia king's only daughter. Alive. Standing in front of her. In a faded pink jacket that had once been someone else's. Emma whispered, "My daddy is looking for me. He is going to come find me. He promised. He said he would tear the whole city apart if anyone took me." Aria's hands were shaking. Not from cold. From fear. From something else. Something like the moment before lightning strikes. 3 blocks away, parked in the shadow of a downtown building, a black Mercedes sat with tinted windows so dark you could not see the shapes inside. Inside, Aleandro Calabrese sat frozen in the back seat. His phone had buzzed. A message from surveillance. A video. For seconds long. His daughter running from somewhere. His daughter being pulled from traffic by a woman in a food delivery uniform. His daughter alive. For 14 months, he had searched. He had torn through criminal networks, interrogated dealers and traffickers, sent men into the tunnels beneath the city. He had moved money and power and violence like chess pieces, and still, the child remained gone. He had stood in her empty bedroom at 3 in the morning, running his hands across the stuffed animals on her bed, remembering the weight of her small body when she fell asleep on his chest. He had not slept. He had not eaten. He had simply existed in the space between hope and murder. The video played again. The woman, skeleton thin, with dark hair and exhausted eyes, did not hesitate. She ran into traffic. She grabbed his daughter like Emma was more precious than her own life. Like Emma mattered more than anything. Tony leaned from the driver's seat. "Boss. That is her. That is Emma." Aleandro could not speak. His throat had closed. His hands had formed fists so tight his nails drew crescents of blood from his palms. His daughter was alive. And a complete stranger had just saved her life. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in a glass office that looked down on Los Angeles like a throne room overlooking a kingdom, Sophie Langford sat across from a man named Douglas Hale. Douglas was 47 years old. He had a scar that ran down one side of his neck. His eyes were colorless, like eyes that had seen too much darkness and had gone numb to it. Sophie was refined. Money had taken her bone structure and her clothes and her posture and arranged them like a portrait painted to look respectable. But underneath, she was cruelty with excellent lighting. Douglas smiled. The girl is confirmed alive. Spotted on Sunset 3 hours ago. Sophie's lips curved up. Then we proceed. Aleandro Calabrese will deliver what I want, or Emma Calabrese will disappear again. This time permanently. Douglas nodded. And the delivery girl? Sophie's smile widened. She is nobody. Just an insignificant woman in a uniform. But she is about to become very useful. Back on Sunset Boulevard, Aria was trying to figure out what to do. Emma would not let go of her. The child clung to her like she was drowning, and Aria was the only life raft in an ocean of darkness. Aria had $34 in her pocket. $34. That was all that remained after she sent money to her mother's hospital bills in Tijuana. After she paid her rent. After she bought rice and beans and the cheapest eggs at the corner market. She called the police. Of course she did. She held Emma on her lap in the back of a patrol car, the child shaking, the officers asking questions Aria could not fully answer. Emma kept repeating the same thing, "My daddy will find me. He said he would find me no matter where I am. He said he would know my heart calling to him." The patrol car drove toward the downtown police station. The sun was setting. October light turned the city orange. Tony drove. Franco sat in the front passenger seat, one hand resting on the gun at his hip. The three of them, Aleandro, Tony, Franco, drove toward the police station as the night deepened and the streets grew empty. Aleandro sat in the back, watching the city pass. His city. Everything in it, ultimately, belonged to him. Everything except his daughter. Everything except the one thing that mattered. The wind picked up. Rain started to fall. It came down cold and sudden, like the sky was breaking open. The patrol car sat in the police station parking lot with its lights off. Inside, Emma sat wrapped in a blanket that was too big for her. She kept asking for the lady. The kind lady. The lady who pulled me out of the street. Officer Martinez sat across from her with a notebook. "What is your name? Do you remember your name?" Emma nodded. "I am Emma. My daddy is Aleandro. He is very big. He is very strong. He is coming to find me." The officers exchanged a look. They knew the name. Everyone knew the name. Within minutes, they had made the call. Within 10 minutes, black SUVs began arriving in the parking lot. Men in dark suits. Men whose shoulders were too broad for normal suits. Men whose eyes were trained to kill. Aria Morales sat in a waiting area with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. She had nowhere else to be. Her shift at the delivery company was long over. Her shift at Westside Elder Care did not start until midnight. She had 6 hours to spare, and she was using them here, making sure that Emma was safe, making sure that someone stayed with the child who had no one else. She did not see them come in. She did not see Aleandro Calabrese until he was directly in front of her. He was tall. 6'3". His build was broad and muscular, the kind of body that came from decades of violence and control. He wore a suit that cost more than Aria made in 3 months. Dark fabric. Open white shirt showing a chest marked with old scars. His dark eyes were fixed on her face like she was the only real thing in the room. The scar on his cheekbone seemed deeper in the fluorescent light, like it went all the way through him. His voice was deep and solid like an oath. "You saved my daughter." Aria could not move. She could not speak. She understood in that moment that she had just made contact with the most powerful man in California. that she was now part of his world, that nothing would ever be the same. Before we continue, drop a like if this story is hitting you in the chest. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. Because what comes in the next hours will shake everything Aria Morales believes about herself. Now let us go back. Let us understand who Aria Morales really is. Let us see the life she was living before a child stumbled into traffic. Let us understand the poverty and the silence that made her invisible. Because understanding her will help you understand why, when Aleandro Calabrese looked at her, something cold and dangerous and completely unprecedented stirred in his chest. 3 weeks before Aria Morales stood in Aleandro Calabrese's mansion, she was invisible. Not the kind of invisible that comes from wanting to disappear. The kind that comes from having nothing worth seeing. Westside Elder Care Facility. 6 in the morning. The fluorescent lights hummed like dying insects. Aria clocked in at the time terminal, her name appearing on a screen nobody important ever looked at. She was 27 years old but looked 40. Her pale blue scrubs hung 2 sizes too large on her frame, fabric pooling at her wrists. Her dark hair was pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face thinner. There were shadows under her eyes like charcoal smudged beneath paper. She moved through the corridors with the quietness of someone who had learned not to take up space. Room 201. Mrs. Chen, 84 years old, dementia eating her mind like rust eating metal. Aria changed her bedpan with gloved hands, whispering soft words in Spanish and English, talking to a woman who could not understand either language anymore. But the tone mattered. The gentleness mattered. She knew this. Room 205. Mr. Harrison needed his catheter changed and his legs massaged because the blood was pooling and turning them purple. She did this work without complaint. Without resentment. This was what she did. This was who she was allowed to be. At 7:30, Mrs. Chen's breakfast arrived. Toast. A small container of oatmeal. A sandwich wrapped in plastic that the kitchen had prepared at 5 in the morning. Mrs. Chen took 3 bites. 3 bites and then she stared at the wall, fork suspended in her trembling hand, forgotten. Aria waited until the hallway was empty. She could hear the mop bucket rattling 3 rooms down. She could hear the television in the common room, turned up too loud because most of the residents were deaf. She slipped into the room, pulled on fresh gloves, and ate the sandwich standing by the supply closet. Turkey and mustard. The bread was soft and white and better than anything in her apartment. She chewed quickly. Eyes on the doorway. Always watching. Always ready to disappear. The footsteps came at 7:45. Sophie Langford appeared in the doorway like a storm front. She was 52 years old but dressed 25. Blonde hair highlighted so aggressively it looked like cornsilk. She wore a blazer that cost more than Aria made in 2 months. A diamond bracelet caught the fluorescent light and threw it across the walls like a weapon. Sophie's eyes were the color of ice, and they were fixed on the plastic wrap in Aria's hand. Sophie's voice dripped contempt like poison from a fang. Eating garbage again, Aria? How pathetic. You know those trays go to actual people. Not scavengers. Not people like you. Aria dropped her eyes. She pulled off the gloves. Her voice came out trembling like a candle in the wind. I am sorry, Ms. Langford. I will not do it again. I was just hungry. I did not eat yesterday, and I. Sophie cut her off with a single raised hand. I do not care about your excuses. You are lucky I do not fire you on the spot. But then who would do the work nobody else wants? Who would empty the bedpans? Who would wipe the mouths of the dying? You need this job more than it needs you. Remember that. Sophie turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the linoleum like a metronome counting down time. Aria stood alone in the supply closet. She could feel the sandwich turning to stone in her stomach. She could feel the familiar weight settling across her shoulders like a mantle made of shame. She had learned long ago that shame was the price of survival. You paid it or you starved. At 2 in the afternoon, Aria took her 15-minute break. She sat in her car, a 2007 Honda Civic with 187,000 miles and a check engine light that had been on for 3 years. She pulled out her phone. There was a text waiting. From the hospital in Tijuana. From the same number that had been texting her for 6 months. Her mother's name was Aria Morales. She had raised Aria alone. Working as a seamstress. Coming home at midnight with her fingers bleeding from needle pricks. Her mother had taught her that love was not something you felt. Love was something you did. Love was showing up. Love was the work. The text said, "Mama needs surgery. $35,000 in 3 days or they remove the cancer treatment. No more time." Aria stared at the number. $35,000. The number seemed abstract. Impossible. Like being asked to move a mountain with a teaspoon. She did the math in her head, a math she had done 1,000 times. She made $14 an hour. She worked 70 hours per week when she could get the shifts. That was $980 before taxes. After taxes, maybe $700. She paid $450 a month for her apartment. That left her with $250 a month for food, gas, bus fare, everything else. She had $34 left until Friday. $34 in her bank account. That was all she had in the world. The math did not work. It had never worked. After her shift ended at 3 in the afternoon, Aria did not go home. Instead, she walked 40 minutes through the Los Angeles streets, past shuttered shops with metal gates pulled down over the windows, past homeless encampments where people sat in a kind of visible dying that the city had learned to look past. Sacred Heart Women's Shelter sat on a corner where 3 neighborhoods collided. It was a brick building that had once been a hotel. Now it was a place where women came when the world had finished breaking them. Sister Maria ran it. She was 73 years old and had more strength in her pinky finger than most people had in their entire bodies. Aria had been coming here for 2 years. Every shift she could spare, she volunteered. She did not tell Sophie Langford about it. If Sophie knew, she would find a way to make the shifts disappear. Sister Maria stood in the front office, papers spread across her desk like confetti. When she saw Aria, her face lit up. "Meja, thank God. Emma has been asking for you all day. She will not eat. She will not speak to anyone else. Only you." Emma was a 7-year-old girl with dark hair and dark eyes that had learned not to trust anything. She had been at the shelter for 14 months. The police found her alone on a street corner in downtown Los Angeles at 3 in the morning, asking for her daddy in a voice so small it sounded like a prayer. She had been missing for 14 months before that. The foster care system was looking for her mother. Nobody was looking for her father. Her file said father unknown. Emma sat alone in the corner of the common room, her knees pulled up to her chest, her arms wrapped around her legs like she was trying to fold herself into nothing. The television was on. Cartoon characters moved across the screen, bright and loud and completely ignored. Aria sat down beside her. She did not touch her. She had learned that Emma did not like to be touched. Something had happened to her. Something that left her flinching from hands. They sat together in silence for 20 minutes. This was Aria's gift. The ability to sit with broken things and not try to fix them. Not try to make them better. Just to be there. To be present. Finally, Emma whispered, "The bad man said my daddy does not want me anymore. That is why he took me. He said my daddy was happy I was gone. That is why he did not look for me." Aria's heart broke into pieces. She could feel it happening, could feel something inside her fracturing like old glass. She spoke softly, "That is not true, Emma. Your daddy loves you. He is looking for you. I know he is." Emma pulled something from her sock. A photograph. Faded. Creased 100 times. A man in an expensive suit, dark-haired, with an intensity in his eyes that seemed to come through even in a photograph. He stood in front of a building with tall white columns. The kind of building that meant money. That meant power. Emma held it toward Aria. Do you think he would want me back? Even though the bad man touched me? Even though I am not clean anymore? Aria reached out to comfort her, and as she moved, her shirt rode up. Just for a moment. Just enough for Emma to see the scars. They ran across Aria's spine in thick, raised lines like terrible handwriting. Like someone had tried to write a story in pain across her back. Some were white and old. Some were darker, the tissue still angry. Emma's small hand reached out and touched one gently, the way you might touch a wounded animal. Did the bad man hurt you too? Aria pulled her shirt down slowly. A long time ago, yes. But I got away, Emma. I got away, and I am still here. I am still alive. And you are going to get away too. I promise you that. You are going to be safe. Emma folded the photograph back into her sock and leaned against Aria's shoulder. It was the first time she had willingly touched another person since arriving at the shelter. The flashback came later, unbidden, in the darkness of Aria's apartment. 8 years ago. She was 19 years old. Her mother was in the hospital in Tijuana with the same cancer that was eating her now. The medical bills were climbing. Aria was working 3 jobs and it was not enough. It was never enough. A man named Douglas Hale found her at a bus stop. He wore a suit that looked expensive. His smile was warm like a fireplace. His name tag said recruiter. He said, I know people in California who need workers. Good pay. Safe housing. You could send money home. You could save your mother. Aria had wanted to believe him so badly. Hope is a drug, and she was desperate for a fix. She had signed the paper he put in front of her. The basement came 2 days later. The beatings came. The branding iron came. His voice, again and again, you are mine now. Nobody is coming for you. Nobody cares about you. You are nobody. She had escaped 6 months later. Had stolen $300 from his wallet while he slept. Had run to the bus station. Had come back to Los Angeles and learned that the police did not care about women like her. That hospitals did not ask questions about where the scars came from. That the world had very specific ideas about who was worth saving. She had pushed it down. Buried it. Built a life on top of the grave. Now, at 11 at night, Aria left the shelter and began walking home. The October wind came off the ocean and carried salt and cold. The streets were empty except for the occasional car and the homeless people who had learned to sleep in doorways and under awnings. Aria pulled her jacket tighter. It was too thin. Everything she owned was too thin. She did not see the black Mercedes 3 blocks behind her. Douglas Hale sat in the passenger seat. His face had aged. There were lines around his eyes now, and his hair had gone gray at the temples. He had moved to Las Vegas after the girl escaped. Had tried to forget about her. Had tried to build another business, another operation, another life. But he had never forgotten. He had thought she was dead. He thought that 8 years of silence meant she had finally given up. That the shame and the scars had become too much. That she had found a way to disappear permanently. Now his associate was showing him a photograph. A woman in volunteer scrubs, sitting with a small dark-haired girl in a shelter. The girl holding a photograph. The girl's face clear enough to identify. Emma Calabrese. Missing 14 months. Douglas Hale smiled. It was not a smile that reached his eyes. It was the smile of a man who had just realized that God had given him a second chance. A way to turn his greatest failure into his greatest leverage. The black Mercedes continued following the invisible woman through the empty Los Angeles streets. She had no idea what was coming. She had no idea that in less than 48 hours, armed guards would arrive at Westside Elder Care. She had no idea that she would be arrested for a theft she never committed. She had no idea that the most powerful man in the city was about to erupt like a volcano that had been dormant for 20 years. All she knew, as her feet carried her through the cold October night, was that her mother was dying. That she had $34. That she was invisible. That nobody was looking for her. That nobody cared. She did not know that she was about to become the most seen, most protected, most fiercely loved woman in Los Angeles. She did not know that the invisible was about to become unforgettable. The marble foyer was so quiet you could hear her heartbeat. Aria Morales stood trembling between two men in charcoal suits, their shoulders blocking out the morning light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Dead leaves swirled against the glass like prisoners trying to escape. Her sneakers, worn thin at the heels, squeaked against the polished stone as she shifted her weight. The disinfectant smell from Westside Elder Care still clung to her scrubs. There was a stain on her sleeve, Mrs. Chen's oatmeal from the 5 a.m. feeding. It was 6:22 in the morning on an October day that would split her life into before and after. The footsteps came from above, measured and unhurried, descending the curved staircase like a blade cutting through air. Aleandro Calabrese moved the way powerful men move when they have never had to rush. 6'3". Black suit tailored so perfectly it seemed part of his body. Hair dark as midnight, silvered at the temples. A scar ran from the outside corner of his left eye to his jawline, thin and precise like a pencil mark made by fate. His eyes were the color of storm clouds an hour before thunder. He stopped 3 steps from the bottom and studied her the way a general surveys a battlefield. The silence stretched like taffy being pulled in both directions. Aria could not breathe. She could not speak. She could only stand there, this invisible woman in her 27-year-old body that looked 40, while one of the most dangerous men in Los Angeles descended toward her like darkness made flesh. "You saved my daughter's life yesterday," Aleandro said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath. Not a question. A statement of fact. Aria nodded. Her throat had closed. The prayer card Emma had given her yesterday, worn and yellowed, the edges soft from handling, was still in her scrub pocket. She could feel its weight like a stone. Emma has been missing for 14 months, Aleandro continued, descending the final steps. Every resource I have. Every contact. Every threat. Nothing. And then she appears at Sacred Heart Shelter, and you are there. You protect her. You give her your lunch when she says she is hungry. He circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. Why? Aria's voice came out like wind through a broken window. She needed help. Who sent you? Nobody. I work at Westside Elder Care. I volunteer at the shelter on my days off. Nobody sent me. She stopped. There was no point explaining. People like her did not get to explain. They got accused. They got judged. They got erased. The side door opened. Sophie Langford emerged like a cobra from a basket, her cream-colored silk blouse immaculate, her blonde hair pulled back so tight it stretched her face into a permanent smile. Behind her came 2 police officers, their uniforms pristine and purposeful. "Mr. Calabrese, I am so sorry to interrupt, but this matter is rather urgent," Sophie said, her voice smooth as glass. "Aria has been stealing from our residence for months. I have been documenting everything. Yesterday she took Mrs. Patterson's diamond earrings. $15,000. I have security footage showing her entering the residence room at 2 a.m. I have the earrings, which were found in her locker this morning." Sophie produced a manila envelope and handed it to one of the officers. "I came directly to you because given that she somehow managed to insert herself into your family situation, I thought you would want to know first." The room tilted. Aria gripped the edge of the marble table beside her, her fingers turning white. "That is not true," Aria whispered. "I never stole anything." "I would never?" "The evidence speaks for itself," Sophie interrupted, turning to Aleandro with her expression of deep regret. "I know how these things look when someone has ulterior motives. When someone tries to position themselves as helpful to gain access or trust. It is actually quite sophisticated manipulation." One of the officers stepped forward. Ms. Morales, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding theft at Westside Elder Care. You have the right to remain silent. Aria's legs felt like water. The prayer card in her pocket suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. Then a phone rang. Franco, the second lieutenant, answered, his face darkening with each word. He looked at Aleandro. Boss. It is Douglas Hale. He says he has information about Emma's disappearance. Says this girl has been working with the people who took her. He wants to make a deal. The name hit Aria like a physical blow. Douglas Hale. The basement. The leather belt. The branding iron. The initials DH burned into her shoulder blade in letters 2 inches tall. She looked at Aleandro, and in his eye she saw something crystallize. Something harden. The calculation of a man realizing he had been played. 3 hours, he said quietly. You are going to tell me everything. All of it. Who you work for. How you knew about Emma. Why Douglas Hale has your name in his mouth. He gestured to the officers. Hold her here. She is not going anywhere. The officers positioned themselves by the doors. Sophie smiled and walked out, her heels clicking on the marble like a countdown timer. Tony and Franco exchanged a look, the kind of look that passes between men who have worked together for 15 years and know what it means when the boss's voice gets that quiet. Aleandro turned back to Aria one final time. And Ms. Morales? If you lie to me, the police will be the least of your problems. He walked out of the foyer, leaving her standing between 2 officers, 3 armed guards, and the terrible weight of a truth nobody would believe. At that same moment, 3 blocks away, Douglas Hale sat in a darkened office above a strip club, the phone still warm against his ear. He smiled. Not a smile that reached his eyes. The smile of a man who had waited 8 years for this moment. Sophie Langford had delivered exactly what she promised. The invisible woman. The runaway. The damaged girl who thought she could disappear. Except she had made one mistake. She had let Aleandro Calabrese see her save his daughter. And in doing that, she had handed Douglas Hale leverage more powerful than anything he had ever possessed. Because a man like Aleandro did not care about money or territory when his child was threatened. A man like Aleandro would trade the world. Would trade her. Would walk through fire. The black Mercedes pulled away from the curb, carrying with it the seed of a reckoning that would unfold like a storm across the city. The dry October wind picked up. The dead leaves outside Westside Elder Care spun faster, caught in a whirlwind nobody had seen coming. And in the Calabrese mansion's foyer, Aria Morales stood alone with her $34 to her name, her dying mother, her invisible life, and the terrible knowledge that the man who had branded her had just found her again. What she did not know was that Aleandro Calabrese had already looked at his daughter Emma that morning. Had already seen the burns on her small arms. Had already made a decision that would put him on a collision course with 2 people who had orchestrated everything perfectly. What she did not know was that being invisible was about to become impossible. The prayer card in her pocket trembled against her heart like a bird trapped in a cage. Somewhere across the city, Emma Calabrese was drawing with crayons she had never had before, drawing the shelter, drawing Aria, drawing the moment someone had finally chosen to see her instead of through her. The colors were bright and wild and fierce. And in his study, Aleandro Calabrese opened a file on Douglas Hale that his intelligence network had compiled 8 years ago. A file that had been closed. A file that was about to be opened again. The clock on the wall read 6:52 a.m. 3 hours until the interrogation began. 24 hours until the court summons took effect. 48 hours until everything changed. The rain had not started yet. But the sky was already turning the color of a bruise. The courtroom doors exploded open. All eyes turned. The sound of expensive footsteps on marble are measured, deliberate, the kind of footsteps that made judges nervous and prosecutors sweat through their shirts. Aleandro Calabrese entered with Tony and Franco flanking him like bookends of a threat nobody had voiced yet. 3 men in dark suits that cost more than Aria's entire wardrobe. 3 men moving through the courtroom like they owned the air itself. The judge's face went the color of old paper. Sophie Langford's diamond earrings caught the fluorescent light, and for one moment they flashed bright. Then she saw Aleandro, and the shine went out of her. Her hand reached for her lawyer's arm. He pulled away. "Your Honor," Aleandro said, his voice deep and solid like an oath carved in stone, "I am here to provide testimony on behalf of Ms. Morales." The judge straightened in his chair, fingers hovering over his gavel like a man reaching for a lifeline. "And you are?" "Aleandro Calabrese." The name hung in the air like a blade suspended above everyone's head. 3 seconds of absolute silence. A prosecutor somewhere in the back fumbled his papers. They scattered across the floor like dead leaves. Nobody bent to pick them up. Sophie's lawyer stood. His voice came out thin. "Your Honor, Mr. Calabrese, while we appreciate your interest in this case, character testimony from a civilian." "I am not a civilian," Aleandro said quietly. He walked to the witness stand. Every movement controlled. Every muscle speaking the language of a man who had spent 20 years teaching people that small gestures carried enormous weight. "I am the father of a 7-year-old girl named Emma Calabrese. That girl was missing for 14 months. Ms. Morales saved her life." He took the oath. His hand on the Bible was steady. His eyes, when they moved to Aria, held something she had never seen directed at her before. Not pity. Recognition. The prosecutor leaned forward, desperate to regain control. "That is touching, Mr. Calabrese, but it does not address the theft charges before this court." A pair of diamond earrings valued at $18,000. "Fabricated," Aleandro said. "Were discovered in the defendant's locker, and 3 witnesses have testified. All of whom are employed by Sophie Langford," Aleandro continued, his voice beginning to rise like a storm gathering over water. "All of whom have reason to silence Ms. Morales. All of whom are lying." Sophie's lawyer stood again. "Objection. Speculation. Inflammatory." "I have surveillance footage," Tony said from the gallery. He held up a tablet. "From 3 separate locations. Would the court like to see Sophie Langford meeting with Douglas Hale, a known human trafficker, on September 14th, September 21st, and October 2nd? The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. The sound was swallowed by the noise of 20 people talking at once. Sophie's face was no longer pale. It was the color of something that had already died. Aleandro's voice cut through everything. Not louder. Colder. "I have audio recordings of those meetings. Conversations between Ms. Langford and Mr. Hale discussing how to frame Aria Morales for a theft that never occurred. I have bank records showing that Ms. Langford has embezzled $340,000 from Westside Elder Care over the past 2 years. I have?" He stopped. His hands were shaking. Tony and Franco exchanged a look that lasted 2 full seconds. In 15 years of working for Aleandro Calabrese, they had never seen his hands shake. Not during interrogations. Not during wars. Not when his daughter disappeared. His hands did not shake. His voice did not crack. His control was absolute. It was the foundation of everything. But something was breaking inside him now. "I have," he continued, and his voice was different, fractured, raw like an exposed nerve, "a woman who has nothing. Nothing. $34 to her name. She eats leftovers from other people's plates because she is too proud to take charity and too desperate to refuse. She has scars on her back from 7 months of torture at the hands of men who believed she was worthless. And she still saved my daughter. She still chose to see Emma when every person in a position of authority chose to see through her." The prosecutor sat down slowly, as if the chair might break if he moved too fast. "And if this court," Aleandro's voice broke on the word. He stopped. Swallowed. Continued. "If you send her to prison for crimes she did not commit, if you let these people succeed in destroying the one person in this room with actual integrity, then there is no justice anywhere. There is only power. And I did not spend 20 years building my empire to watch power destroy someone good. He stepped down from the witness stand. The judge cleared his throat. Adjusted his glasses. The gesture was automatic, the gesture of a man whose entire worldview had just shifted 3 degrees and he was trying to pretend nothing had moved. Ms. Langford, the judge said, his voice thin and official and trying very hard to sound like it had not just been overruled by sheer force of will, you will remain for questioning by the FBI. All charges against Ms. Morales are dismissed immediately. Aria did not remember standing. She did not remember crossing the distance between the defendant's table and Aleandro. But suddenly she was there, in front of him, and his hands came up to steady her, and she collapsed into sobs that had been waiting 8 years to be released. His coat smelled like expensive wool and something else. Something like cedar and rain. Something like safety. Tony turned away, pretending to look at his phone. Franco walked to the window. They understood. Some things were not meant to be witnessed, even by family. That night, Aria stood on the roof of her apartment building. 5 stories up. The October wind cut through her jacket like fragments of broken glass. Rain had started to fall. Cold. Bitter. The kind of rain that did not fall gently but attacked, driven sideways by wind that had no mercy. Her hand shook as she held a letter she had been writing for the last 3 hours. The letter confessed everything. Her feelings for Aleandro. Her gratitude. Her decision to disappear because Douglas Hale would never stop hunting her, because loving Aleandro meant putting Emma in danger, because the only way to protect the people she had learned to love was to remove herself from the equation entirely. She looked over the edge. The drop was not long. 5 stories. It would be quick. Merciful. Her mother would receive the $35,000 Aleandro had transferred that morning. Aria had confirmed it herself. Her debts were paid. Emma was safe. Aleandro would grieve for a while and then move forward, as powerful men do. There was nothing left keeping her here except pain. She stepped closer to the edge. The concrete was wet beneath her shoes. Her breath was visible in the cold air. Her worn prayer card slipped from her pocket. The card she had carried since she was 14 years old, the prayer her abuela had written in her own hand, the words in Spanish asking for nothing but survival. It tumbled through the darkness and disappeared. Then she heard Emma's voice in her memory. Scars mean we survived. 1 sentence. 1 tiny thing. It stopped her like a blade stopping mid-swing. She stepped back from the edge. Her legs gave out. She sat down on the wet concrete, shaking, and continued writing the letter instead. Not a suicide note. A goodbye that was not goodbye. A confession that was not a farewell. A prayer that maybe, somehow, the universe was still listening. 3 blocks away, in an abandoned warehouse in Vernon, Douglas Hale sat in a makeshift office counting cash from his latest shipment of victims. Bundles of $100 bills stacked in neat rows like bricks in a fortress. The lights cut out all at once. Darkness swallowed everything. Then 12 men moved through the building like ghosts, like smoke given human form, and Douglas Hale understood that his time had ended. Aleandro's voice came through the darkness. Douglas Hale. You are finished. Douglas pulled a gun. His hand shook so badly the barrel wobbled. You cannot touch me. I have connections. I have? Tony disarmed him in 2 seconds. The gun fell. Douglas fell with it, forced to his knees on the concrete floor, trembling like a cornered animal with no escape left. Please, Douglas whispered. I can give you names. I can give you routes. Whatever you want. Aleandro stepped closer. His voice was empty now. Hollowed out. All feeling drained away. I do not want your information. I want you gone. Completely gone. Like you never existed. Franco nodded to the entrance. A black van pulled up outside. Men with Russian accents exited. The Volkov family. Aleandro's rivals. men who had been hunting Douglas Hale for 2 years for trafficking their niece across state lines. "He is yours," Aleandro said. Douglas screamed as they dragged him toward the van. Screamed Aleandro's name. Screamed pleas that nobody listened to. The van doors closed. The engine started. And Douglas Hale disappeared into the night like he had never been born at all. Next morning, at 6:06 a.m., FBI agents raided Westside Elder Care. Sophie Langford was arrested in her office, still in her expensive suit, still wearing her diamond earrings. The handcuffs looked wrong on her wrists. Everything about her seemed suddenly fragile, like a porcelain doll someone had dropped on concrete. Federal charges: embezzlement, conspiracy, fraud, evidence tampering, wire fraud. 47 counts total. The news cameras caught her perp walk. She screamed at the journalists crowding around her, "This is a mistake. I am innocent. Aleandro Calabrese has orchestrated this. I am innocent." But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank transfers. Recordings. Documents. Photographs of her and Douglas meeting in hotel lobbies, parking lots, coffee shops where nobody paid attention to them. Minimum 40 years federal prison. The judge said it with no emotion in his voice, the way you might state a fact about the weather. Aria watched the news from her apartment, sitting on her fire escape with a cup of cold coffee cradled in her hands. She watched Sophie Langford be led away in handcuffs. Watched her reputation collapse like a building hit by dynamite. Watched the woman who had spent 8 years making her invisible finally become invisible herself. But Aria did not smile. She did not feel triumph. She felt only the weight of survival, the strange heaviness that comes when you realize the people who hurt you are finally contained, but the wounds they created are not gone. Her phone buzzed. A message from Aleandro: "Are you safe?" 3 words. A question that carried the weight of 20 years of power and one night of a man losing control because he chose to care about something more than his own empire. She typed back, "Yes." Then, after a long moment, she added, "Thank you." The rain continued to fall outside. And somewhere across the city, Emma Calabrese was drawing with crayons in every color, drawing Aria, drawing the moment someone finally chose to see her instead of through her. The rain hammered against the bus window like 1,000 desperate fists. Aria Morales sat rigid in seat 14C, her fingers gripping a worn prayer card so tightly the lamination cracked. In her other pocket, $34. That was everything. The bus lurched forward, pulling out of the station into the Los Angeles night, taillights bleeding red through the downpour. She did not look back. 3 hours earlier, she had walked out of the Calabrese mansion with a sealed envelope in her trembling hands and a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. The letter had taken her 40 minutes to write. Every word had cost her something, a piece of her heart, a fragment of the hope she had begun to let herself feel. She had written about scars. About gratitude. About the terrifying, impossible thing blooming in her chest that she could not name without breaking. The driver's radio crackled. A news report about Federal Route 5. A traffic accident. A vehicle pulled off near the San Diego exit. Aria's heart stopped in her chest. She pressed her forehead against the cold window and did not breathe. Behind her, in a black Mercedes that had been following the bus for the last 20 minutes, Aleandro Calabrese gripped the steering wheel with hands that had ordered 1,000 ruthless things but had never shook like this. Tony sat in the passenger seat, jaw clenched, saying nothing. Franco drove the second vehicle 2 cars behind. They had moved with precision, 12 men across Los Angeles, splitting forces, checking stations, hospitals, hotels. The Greyhound had been the 7th possibility. It was the one that mattered. Aleandro had read the letter 3 times before Tony found her. Each reading had carved something away from the cold architecture of his heart. "I am falling in love with you." 5 words on paper that unmade 20 years of armor. The bus slowed. Ahead, the brake lights of traffic. An accident scene. Highway patrol with lights rotating like slow red stars. The bus pulled onto the shoulder with a long pneumatic hiss. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are being diverted," the driver announced, his voice flat. "We will resume in approximately 30 minutes. An officer boarded, rain dripping from his hat brim. He held a photograph. "Is there an Aria Morales on this bus?" Aria's stomach dissolved. She stood on legs that did not feel like legs. Around her, other passengers turned. A woman with a sleeping child. An old man with a cardboard suitcase. A teenage girl with earbuds. They watched as Aria moved into the aisle, as if she were walking through water. "Yes," she whispered. "You need to step off the vehicle." Outside, the rain fell in sheets. The highway stretched empty in both directions. Aria descended the bus steps, one hand gripping the metal railing. The officer gestured toward the shoulder. She walked, her shoes splashing through puddles that reflected the highway patrol lights. And then she saw the Mercedes. Aleandro stood beside it, suit-soaked, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes burning like a man who had lost everything and found it again in the same moment. He did not move. He did not command. He simply stood there, getting drenched, waiting for her to choose whether to run or stay. "You should not have come," Aria said. Her voice was barely audible beneath the rain. "You wrote that you are falling in love with me." His voice cut through the storm like a blade wrapped in ice. "Did you mean it?" "It does not matter. I have to go." She turned toward the darkness beyond the highway lights. "Did you mean it?" Aria stopped. She did not turn around. "Yes. But that does not change anything. I bring danger. I bring pain. People like me do not get happy endings." Aleandro stepped closer. "I read your letter twice. Then I realized something. I have been lying to myself for 2 weeks. Telling myself I helped you because you saved Emma. Because it was strategic. Because it balanced a debt." He paused. Rain streamed down his face. "But that is not true." "Then why did you help me?" Her voice cracked. "Because watching you eat leftovers in a hallway broke something in me I thought was dead forever. Because your scars look like mine. Because you chose kindness when cruelty would have been easier, and you did not even know you were being brave." He stepped closer still. "I helped you because I am in love with you, and I did not know how to say it until you tried to leave." Aria turned to face him. Tears streamed down her cheeks, indistinguishable from the rain. "You cannot love me. I am damaged. I am poor. I am nobody. You are everything." He reached out, his hand finding her face, his thumb brushing away tears that kept coming. "And you are not leaving. Because I lost 20 years to being cold. I lost my brother to being ruthless. I am not losing you to being afraid. If they come for you, let them come. I will end them. Every single one." He pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against his chest, her fists gripping his soaked jacket, sobbing in a way she had not allowed herself to sob in 8 years. Around them, the rain continued its assault. The highway lights blurred. The officer who had escorted her off the bus stood respectfully away, understanding something about the gravity of what was happening that transcended law enforcement. Tony watched from the Mercedes, and for the first time in 15 years of serving Aleandro Calabrese, he saw his boss crying too. 6 months later, spring sunlight flooded the kitchen of the Calabrese mansion. Aria stood at the stove in jeans and a soft cream sweater, her face flushed from heat and happiness. The hollows beneath her eyes had filled. She had gained 15 pounds. Her hair, which had been dull and brittle, now shone like polished chestnut. She was humming, actually humming, as she scrambled eggs. Emma burst through the doorway at 7 in the morning, backpack bouncing, uniform crisp. "Mama Aria, I am ready for school." "Sweet girl, I am not your mama yet." Aria smiled as she slid eggs onto a plate. "Daddy said you will be soon. He bought a ring. I saw it in his desk." Aria's cheeks burned crimson. Before she could respond, Aleandro entered, kissing the top of her head with a gentleness that made Emma giggle uncontrollably. This version of him, the one who smiled freely, who touched Aria without calculation, who made Emma laugh so hard she snorted orange juice, was still new enough to feel like a miracle. In San Diego, in a clean recovery room at Scripps Hospital, Rosa Morales sat upright in bed for the first time in 2 years. The surgery had worked. The infection had cleared. Color had returned to her face like a slow sunrise. She FaceTimed her daughter that evening, and when Aria's face appeared on the screen, Rosa wept. "Mija, you look like you are glowing. That man treats you well. Better than I ever imagined anyone could, Mama. Then I am grateful. To God and to him." At Westside Elder Care, changes happened quietly and then all at once. New management arrived in the form of Aria Morales, installed by Aleandro as the facilities director. Better wages. Better food. Dignity restored. Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who had once left her sandwich crusts for Aria to eat, hugged her fiercely in the hallway. "You were always too good for this place. Now you are making it better." On the television in the mansion study, a news report played on mute. Douglas Hale's photograph flashed across the screen. Presumed dead. Case closed. Aria did not need to hear the details. She had made peace with that story the moment Aleandro chose her over his empire's silence. She turned off the television. Sophie Langford appeared in the next segment, perp walk footage from 6 months earlier. 42 years federal prison. FCI Dublin. No parole eligibility for 20 years. The woman who had spent 8 years making Aria invisible had become invisible herself, erased into a cell, her cruelty finally contained. Aria felt only quiet satisfaction. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just the knowledge that the world had corrected itself. The evening of the proposal, Aleandro took Aria to the mansion roof. It was transformed. String lights wove between the railings like captured stars. White roses bloomed in every corner. Candles flickered in glass holders that caught the spring breeze. The Los Angeles skyline glowed gold and amber in the distance. "Aria Morales," Aleandro said, dropping onto one knee, "you walked into my life with nothing but scars and courage. You saved my daughter. You saved me. You taught me that after the coldest winter, spring always comes. Will you marry me?" "Yes." She pulled him to his feet, kissing him as tears spilled down her face. 1,000 times yes. The wedding came on a Saturday in May. A small ceremony in the mansion gardens. Emma, dressed in pale yellow, scattered rose petals with the concentration of a child performing the most important job in the world. Tony and Franco stood as best men, both smiling in a way that shocked everyone who knew them. Rosa sat in the front row, healthy and radiant, her hand over her heart as she watched her daughter become a bride. Aria wore a simple white dress that cost more than she had earned in 5 years at Westside Elder Care, but the money did not matter. What mattered was Aleandro's face when he saw her walking toward him. What mattered was the moment he placed the ring on her finger, a diamond set in white gold, simple and strong, like her. In the photos from that day, captured by a photographer Aleandro had hired, Aria glows from within. The scars on her arms are visible in several shots, catching the sunlight. She does not hide them. She wears them like a history finally made beautiful. That night, as the celebration continued with champagne and dancing, Aria stepped away to the garden. Aleandro found her there, standing beneath the stars, the prayer card still in her pocket, the one she had carried through homeless shelters and emergency rooms, through Sophie's cruelty and Douglas's threats. She had not needed it for months. But she kept it because it reminded her of who she had been and how far she had traveled. "Are you happy?" Aleandro asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Deliriously happy," she whispered. "In a way I did not know was possible." He held her while the night deepened around them. Somewhere in the mansion, Emma was falling asleep. Somewhere in San Diego, Rosa was dreaming of her daughter's face. Somewhere in federal prison, Sophie Langford was counting down 42 years. Somewhere in the dark, Douglas Hale was gone, finally truly gone, erased from the story. And Aria Morales, the girl who had been invisible, the woman who had been broken, the human being who had chosen courage over safety, was finally, truly home. After the rain, the sky clears. And sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. If this story touched you, drop a like and share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe for more stories that prove love and justice can win. Comment below, what would you have done in Aria's place? Would you have saved Emma? Would you have written the goodbye letter? Tell me your story. New video drops tomorrow. Until then, remember, you are never too broken to be loved. You are never too poor to matter. You are never too scared to choose courage. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.